I've gotten permission from Scholastic to read this book. Red Riding Hood by James Marshall. A long time ago, in a simple cottage beside the deep, dark woods, there lived a pretty child called Red Riding Hood. She was kind and considerate, and everybody loved her. One afternoon, Red Riding Hood's mother called to her. "Granny isn't feeling up to snuff today," she said, "so I've baked her favorite custard as a little surprise. Be a good girl and take it to her, will you?" Red Riding Hood was delighted. She loved going to Granny's, even though it meant crossing the deep, dark woods. When the custard had cooled, Red Riding Hood's mother wrapped it up and put it in a basket. "Now, whatever you do," she said, "go straight to Granny's. Do not tarry, do not speak to any strangers." "Yes, ma'am," said Red Riding Hood. Before long, she was in the deepest part of the woods. "Oh," she said, "this is scary." Students, will you take just a minute and make a prediction about what you think might happen next? Suddenly, a large wolf appeared. "Good afternoon, my dear," he said. "Care to stop for a little chat?" "Oh, gracious me," said Red Riding Hood. "Mama said not to speak to any strangers." But the wolf had such a charming manner. "And where are you going, sweet thing?" he said. "I'm on my way to visit Granny, who lives in a very pretty yellow house on the other side of the woods," said Red Riding Hood. "She feels poorly, and I'm taking her a surprise." "You don't say," said the wolf. Just then he had a delightful idea. "No reason why I can't eat them both," he thought. "Allow me to escort you," he said. "You never know what might be lurking about." "You are too kind," said Red Riding Hood. Beyond the forest they came to a patch of sunflowers. "Why not pick a few?" suggested the wolf. "Grannies love flowers, you know." But while Red Riding Hood was picking the prettiest bouquet, the clever wolf hurried on ahead to Granny's house. Students, will you take a second and predict what do you think Red Riding Hood's going to do when she notices Wolf isn't there anymore? "Who is it?" cried Granny. "It is I, your delicious Sir Darling granddaughter," said the wolf in a high-pitched voice. "The door isn't locked," said Granny. "Surprise!" cried the wolf. Granny was furious at having her reading interrupted. "Get out of here, you horrid thing!" she cried. Students, will you make a prediction of what might happen next? but the wolf gobbled her right up. He didn't even bother to chew. "Tasty," he said, patting his belly. "So tasty." Just then he heard footsteps in the garden path. "Here comes dessert!" And losing no time, he put on Granny's cap and glasses, jumped into bed, and pulled over the covers. Students, something tragic just happened, and I want you to make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen? Do you really think that Red Riding Hood is going to get eaten by the wolf, or do you think something else will happen? Make a prediction. "Who is it?" he called out in his sweetest granny voice. "It is I, your granddaughter," said Red Riding Hood. "The door is unlocked," said Wolf. Uh-oh. Red Riding Hood was distressed at seeing his grandmother so changed. "Why, Granny," she said, "what big eyes you have." "The better to see you, my dear," said the wolf. "And, Granny, what long arms you have." "The better to hug you, my dear," said the wolf. "And, Granny, what big teeth you have." "The better to eat you, my dear," cried the wolf. And he gobbled her right up. "I'm so wicked, he said. But really, he was enormously pleased with himself. He had enjoyed such a heavy meal. He was soon snoring away. A hunter passing by was alarmed by the frightful racket. "That doesn't sound like Granny," he said. And so the brave hunter jumped in the window, killed the sleeping wolf, and cut him open. Out jumped Granny and Red Riding Hood. "We're ever so grateful," said Red Riding Hood. "That wicked wolf won't trouble you again," said the hunter. "It was so dark in there I couldn't read a word," said Granny. Red Riding Hood promised never, ever to speak to another stranger, charming manners or not. And she never did. Alright, students, I have a couple questions for you. Usually when we talk about fiction, we talk about our characters and their character traits, okay? So I want you to think about Red Riding Hood. And I want you to think, what kind of person is Red Riding Hood? How would you describe her? Okay, now I want you to think about the wolf. What kind of person is the wolf, or what kind of character is Wolf? How would you describe him? Okay, and my last question for this book is, what lesson do you think Red Riding Hood learned?